Well, hello, Sheriff Mack. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm still very encouraged by the election, and I'm encouraged by things going on in Arizona. We just got a huge election here for Jerry Sheridan for Maricopa County Sheriff, the fourth largest sheriff's office in the United States.
Right.
And he was just interviewed yesterday by a local ABC affiliate, and they asked him about his affiliation with the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and he gave a stellar answer. And I'm just so proud of him, and I'm just so proud to have been a part of his campaign. And I think he was the only sheriff in Arizona that asked for my endorsement.
Wow. And by the way, there's the website on the screen that you guys can check him out with that too. And by the way, I just had to interject. I'm sorry we didn't get on earlier, but man, there's like everything that came up, and I apologize for that. But I really think that, Sheriff Mack can actually kind of illustrate some of the issues. I mean, while he doesn't know all the things about the Nassar thing, that's not a problem, guys.
No.
The key is we're moving back to a constitutional republic, and we're taking our country back with that kind of stuff too. And he is definitely part of that.
That's the key. And I have always preached that we should abolish the IRS, that we should abolish the Federal Reserve, and that we should get back to gold and silver standard. Always.
Right.
As long as I can remember that I've been in this, even when I was sheriff, I said those things were necessary. And my big deal is now that we have the sheriffs look at the corruption of the IRS and don't allow them to come into your county. Don't allow random baseless audits of your people. Do not allow this bully organization to come in and bully your citizens, abuse them and oppress them and violate their civil rights.
Right.
Why would any sheriff allow corrupt federal bureaucracies to come into their counties? There's lots.
You're preaching to the choir, because I've made a comment before. I mean, I've been audited more times than I can count. My last one was this random audit, and it made me feel like guilty until proven innocent.
Of course.
And God worked it out for His glory and for my help. But when those kind of things happen, you just sit there and you go, you're getting railroaded every time you turn around. And
my wife's father got audited 10 years in a row. See, it's that kind of harassment and bullying and intimidation and flat out illegalities that the IRS has done. They used to give commissions, and I think they still do, commissions to the agents who go do audits and get more money for the federal government. They would get commissions. And it's just nonsense like that. And why we even have them if they would get rid of the federal income tax, which they should do. But let's just say they did it fair and honest and simple. We wouldn't even need the IRS because it is so complicated. That's why they're in business.
Sure. I mean, 100%. And the reality is, when we talk about the deletion of the IRS, which, by the way, Trump is telling you all the little indicators. I mean, deleting the Social Security for Social Security people, deleting tips, deleting overtime stuff is an indicator, but he doesn't have to say it to the people because they won't understand what he's talking about. But it is an indicator of the IRS death. And those are the cool things that are out there, because that actually funds the elite idiots out there. And when you realize that nature of it, that states and federal are funded by tariffs and sales tax, and a few other excise tax.
Well, and I know we've gotten off topic where you asked me how I'm doing, but that's the whole thing. Because of the corruption of Washington, D.C., and the corrupt spending and the illegal spending of our United States Congress, our money, all of our money, just goes to pay the interest on their corruption, on their corrupt spending. That's all. It doesn't go into help people. It doesn't go into welfare. It doesn't go into infrastructure. It goes simply to pay the interest on their corrupt debt.
Amen.
So why are we
Amen.
paying it? Why are we paying it? Why
Well,
do I need to give my money to their corrupt debt?
well, guess what, guys? It's going to be ending here in a very short time frame. I mean,
Amen
we've
to
been
that.
hoping for it. I never thought we'd get through, another, cabal election. But I'm telling you right now, we're coming to the end of the silliness with that too.
Right.
And here's why Sheriff Mack is so important. We need to understand the constitutionality that we have been missing. We've been, the media and government has been talking about democracy. Well,
Oh
guess
my
what? We're not a democracy. We never have been, but
what
we've been operating like one for a long time.
would somebody please tell Fox News
Oh yeah.
it's not democracy 2024. It's
Yep.
not democracy 2022. It's not democracy 2020, and so on and so on. Why don't you guys study the Constitution, study the Declaration of Independence, and then determine what form of government we're supposed to have? And maybe while you're at it, recite the Pledge of Allegiance. And when you get to the part and to the republic for which it stands, then maybe you could start realizing we were never intended to be a democracy, and you falling in line with that propaganda scam is really, well, beneath you. Okay. And it also makes you look like you're part of the problem instead of the solution, which, and I've seen a couple of people on Fox actually say that we're not a democracy, but I think they got fired.
Yeah. Well, and you're absolutely right. But here's the thing that I find fascinating when I'm a historian, a minor historian
Oh,
myself.
me too.
And so anyone who studies your history knows one weird thing, and this is more post World War II, is all of the of the military officers of the time and governmental officers were saying we're bringing democracy. Well, guess what that really means? It means that they were bringing out the elitism and they were stealing from those people. And so democracy was never meant to be brought to people.
No.
They need to be in their freedom, in their sovereign nature with that too. And that's what a constitutional republic does.
Well, that's another thing. Democracy is not a synonym to freedom or liberty. Quite the contrary. It's mobocracy, which means democratic dictatorships. As long as you have the majority saying this is what we're going to do, then that's what they do. And one of my favorite stories is Rosa Parks. And see, two deputy sheriffs or two police officers, two law enforcement officers got on the bus and arrested her for not giving her seat to a white man. This is in our presentation. This is what I do when I do training seminars across the country for law enforcement or public officials or for the people, for the public. This is on a video in my presentation, and I show Rosa Parks getting arrested. And then I want you to ask every peace officer and sheriff in this country, if you were called back into time, knowing what we know now about civil rights and equality, would you arrest Rosa Parks?
Right.
And then the answers, and I've had dozens of answers from current cops, sheriffs, and others, and they don't know how to answer it. And some won't even answer it. And one guy even said, well, back then I would have arrested her, but today I wouldn't.
The law doesn't change because the atmosphere is different.
Exactly. Cultural norms were different. Okay. So yes, I would have arrested her just because it was the right thing to do back then. No, it wasn't. It was never the right thing to do, ever. Okay. So
and it goes into your point though. I mean, we could just fast forward into this same thing, is
right.
that when we got into the COVID and all the mandate things.
Same thing.
And
that's what I compared it to. Exactly. And there were 550 sheriffs that stood against COVID-19 mandates. Over 550. There probably was more. But this is the thing that I add to Rosa Parks. This is what should have happened. And I'm the only person in anywhere in the country that trains on this, that creates a different narrative about Rosa Parks. What should they have done? What should the sheriff have done? What should the two cops that arrested her, what should they have done? Well, I pray, man, I'm going to get, excuse
That's
me.
okay.
Yeah, no, I think I got it. Still early in the morning for me, I guess. But anyway,
Sure.
the sheriff would have been in, happened to be in dispatch when he heard the call come out. And he tells dispatch, Deputy Jones and I will go handle that call. Oh, the dispatcher. Oh, great. Okay, good. And they thought, well, Rosa Parks in for it now. The sheriff's going to go get her. But the sheriff knew her, and he knew that she had done this before. And his deputy and he walked onto the bus, walked up to Rosa Parks, and he goes, Mrs. Parks, what seems to be the problem here? And folks, again, this is what should have happened. Okay. And she goes, Sheriff, why can't we just be left alone? Does anybody else feel like that today? How about the
Yeah.
Amish?
Oh,
All
yeah.
of us. How about tax protesters? How about people who just believe in the Constitution,
Sure.
like you and I do? And so that kind of touches the sheriff. And he sits down next to her and he reaches over and shakes her hand. And he said, Mrs. Parks, what you did here tonight took a lot of courage. And it would be an honor for my deputy and me to escort you home safely. Would you allow us that? And she's kind of wondering, what kind of meetings do these two guys go to at night,
Right.
But she knew she lived in a well-lit area, and it was a well-lit area where she got off the bus. And she says, that'd be nice, Sheriff. Thank you. So he does. He escorts her home. And when her husband sees him walking up the steps, he freaks out and says, what's wrong? What's wrong? Oh, are you kidding? And the sheriff says, it's okay. It's going to be okay. Rosa refused to give her seat to a white man. He yells at her, says, why did you do that? I told you to stop doing that. You're going to get us all killed. And the sheriff calms him down again and said, Mr. Parks, I promise you that it's going to be okay. We're going to give you and your family extra patrol all night tonight and throughout the coming days so that we make sure that you are protected and that nobody comes to your home and burns a cross or whips you or anything. There's not going to be any of that. Furthermore, I have to ask you, do you have a gun in the home? And he said, yes, I do. I have a 12 gauge. And the sheriff says, do you keep it loaded? He said, Sheriff, it doesn't do you any good if it's not loaded. and he says, touche, good. He says, because I cannot guarantee you that we'll be here 24/7, but it's going to be a lot. And if you need to protect you and your family, let your conscience be your guide.
Correct.
And then that, folks, that is the answer. That is a constitutional sheriff. And he takes care of all citizens who are under threat, who are being abused or might be abused. That is the defense of a constitutional sheriff. And don't you want one of those?
We all should want that. We all should want that kind of response. I've
That's
used
what we
this.
do. That's what, just so you know, that's what we do at CSPOA. And it doesn't matter who's president. I'm really glad Trump got elected because we have some real possibilities here now to really correct the horrible path we're on and to stop the communist takeover of America. But we have other work to do, and we still take America back county by county. And you've got to be working with your sheriff, and every one of you can join the CSPOA posse. All of you, every citizen should be a member of our Constitutional Sheriffs Peace Officers Association posse, and we have training for you every Wednesday so that you know how to work with your sheriff so he knows how to defend the Constitution.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I've used this example for a few times, but I remember having an issue that I had to I canceled a plane flight to Portland, and it was going for a business meeting. And the first thing that they said is when you check in the hotel, this is in the height of the crazy, is that you had to take a COVID test. And I said, no, I don't. Well, it's the mandate of our city. And I said, you don't have a clue what the difference between a mandate and an actual law is. And I was talking to the vice president of this company who does HR, which that is one of the highest legal authority in a particular company, private company. And I said, let me put it to you this way. A law is drawn up by, a Senate or, a House
a legislative body.
confirmed by the Senate if it's in a state level, and then has a governor that will sign it into law. Or in a federal level, we have the Congress to the Senate all the way up to the president, and then you have your SCOTUS judges or different levels of judges say, you know what, we need you to modify that because it doesn't follow the constitutionality. This is what Adams set up more 250 years ago. But the point was, I said, that's what a law does. But none of these mandates have anything to do with that. They're only policy procedures. And if you choose to live under a policy procedure, then you are a part of it. But if I deny my level of saying, I'm not going to be a part of your mandate, then therefore I am in the legal right to be outside of the mandate.
Of course.
And they looked at me like I was, I had three heads on, and it's because most people are just starting to learn this right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that we teach, though, also, even if they go through the process to pass legislation, the sheriffs still should not be enforcing that.
Right. As long as it's not constitutional.
Well, yeah, if it's unconstitutional, why would who determines what's constitutional? Want me to tell you the truth? Is everybody ready for this answer? It's the person who swears the oath to uphold and defend it. That's who determines if it's constitutional. He doesn't say, the sheriff or anyone else for that matter doesn't say, I solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States and will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. He doesn't say, if the judges let me.
Correct.
Or if the legislatures let me. Or if my sergeant says I can. It's up to him. It's up to you. Whoever takes the oath is responsible for its fulfillment. And so we trained all sorts of sheriffs. You don't enforce gun control laws because gun control is against the law in the United States of America. And you don't enforce mandates. You don't arrest pastors for having church in the United States of America. And I don't care if they pass 5,000 laws. And when I sued the federal government, that's what came up. You see, the Brady Bill was promulgated by the federal government, U.S. Congress, signed by President Clinton. And then the BATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, sent 3 agents to our Sheriff's Association meeting in Phoenix. And there's only 15 counties in Arizona. Only 13 sheriffs were there, but 3 agents come to our meeting and hand us a 25-page document detailing what we're supposed to do to enforce this federal law for them. The founders in the Declaration of Independence called such laws pretended legislation. We need to remember that. It's in the Declaration of Independence of the 27 lists of why they declared war on England. And so when they came in, they said, I told them, and they read all this stuff to us, and they even read to us that there was a threat of arrest towards all the sheriffs if we refused to comply. If we refused to enforce the Brady Bill for the federal government for free, it didn't matter if they had money or not. I wasn't going to do it if they paid me $1 million a month. It didn't matter. But they wanted us to do this for free, more social engineering like the COVID-19. But
Correct.
This time it was social engineering for sheriffs to go along with them because they threatened us. Oh, wow. So I became the first sheriff in American history to sue the federal government. I said, you guys can't do this. And when the agents were in the office, we're in our meeting. This is what you just reminded me of, because I said, that you guys don't have any authority over sheriffs. We don't work for you. And they go, you would think that. And I said, yeah, I would. And he says, but Congress passed a law saying that you do. And I said, I don't care if they pass 500 laws. I don't work for you. The people of my county pay my salary. They appoint me, and they're the only people that can fire me. And folks, just so you know, the sheriff only reports to you. He does not have another boss. He doesn't report to a committee. He doesn't report to bureaucrats. And he sure the hell does not take orders from other bureaucrats like the BATF that day.
So,
From the
who is the
FBI.
top authority of a sheriff of Maricopa, or for instance, I live in Tulsa County. Who's the top authority above him?
Well, you want it documented from the United States Supreme Court?
Sure.
Okay. Justice Scalia wrote this decision. And folks, by the way, every one of you needs a copy of this. Okay. All right. There's the title. It's on my website. When you get on there to join our posse, pick up a few of these, shop for these. Look, this fit in your coat pocket or your shirt pocket. It's only 16 pages. You can read this in 10 minutes. This is all the highlights of the case, the most powerful 10th Amendment state sovereignty case in the history of America. This case has been hidden, and now it's not hidden from you anymore. Go to cspoa.org, cspoa.org, and buy these by the dozens so that you can pass them around to people in your community so they know the truth about all of this. But here's Scalia, and he's actually saying, he's introducing the case to the world. And in his introduction, he says, because there is no constitutional text speaking to this precise question. Actually, there is, and he actually explains how that is. The answer to the CLEOs, and maybe you can see this right there below my finger. CLEOs. Folks, what is a CLEO? It is Chief Law Enforcement Officer. Those of us who sued this, the Supreme Court of the United States called us the CLEOs. You know why? Because the Brady Bill itself discusses us as CLEOs. They said, this document, this rule shall go to the CLEOs of the country. And they delivered it to the sheriffs. The sheriffs are the CLEOs in every county and in every state. And why? Because they answer directly to the power source. All power is inherent in the people, to quote Thomas Jefferson. Folks, we are the CLEOs because we answer only to you. And you appoint us. And you are in charge. First three words of the Constitution. We the people.
Right.
And we need to take that back. And we need to understand that's not just because we vote. It's because what the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. It's because we're vigilant and we're active. And we make sure that these politicians, we hold their feet to the fire. And now we have a mandate. And all of us need to come together to do what? Return America to its constitutional foundation. And that's what we're after.
And it terrifies it terrifies the left, and it frankly terrifies both sides of the aisle. It terrifies the media because what happens is they're driven by those elites, and the reality that most people don't realize. In a socialist or a communist nation, it takes 5% of the population to say, we're not doing that.
No.
And it destroys the nature of it. And by the way, we just had the response of American people with a ton of voter and election fraud issues that Trump still won by 8-10 million votes, which is more likely. It's
I have a question for you.
30 or 40.
I have a question for you there that I intended to ask you about that, what you're saying. I brought this up at a meeting just a couple of months ago, and I posed this question. I'll pose it to you. I still believe there was widespread cheating. And I believe that the people that control those tabulating machines and those computers, did they cheat for Donald Trump? And why? Why would they want to cheat for Donald Trump?
The reality is, I don't believe that occurs. I mean, I'm going to give you a little diatribe that I bring up a lot. I am an audiologist as well as, this moving into this new realm here, but I have to calibrate my own machines that test for hearing. Okay. And if I don't calibrate those machines, the state can come in, and there's a great reason for calibrating a machine, because you're trying to diagnose someone's hearing, right? So if we don't do this correctly with the correct machinery, then what we've done is we've led a lie, in essence. Okay. So the state can come in and wipe me out in just a second. I mean,
of course.
All they have to do is report it to all the insurances and several other issues, and not just am I in bankruptcy, but I'm the clinic is done. The fascinating point are the 32 machines that exist, which are Dominion machines, exist in America, have not been calibrated since 2017, which means
illegal.
Which means that the elections of 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024 are all in an illegal nature already. Right. Now, the one thing that's been fascinating about the presidential election of 2020 and 2024 is that both of them had a watermark, a GPS tracker upon those ballots. And what they did by that is that if you brought in bad types of ballots, and by the way, they did this in 2020 and they did it in 2022, and especially they did it in Maricopa County. What they did is that those people who were putting the tabulators were violating their oath. Right. Now we have a problem of oath breakers and the poll workers, and all kinds of different agencies around it. And so what I say to people is that we're seeing an unprecedented time frame of massive fraud, but it's been going on for a very long time.
So are you saying, bottom line, are you saying that they did not cheat this year?
There was cheating going on. They just couldn't accomplish enough cheating. The reality that they did for Kamala is Kamala only won maybe 2% of her own Democratic nomination possibility in 2020. So how do you bring up from a 2%er to having 66 million, 62 million, whatever the number is? I mean, what they did is they had the 10 to 20 million illegals. They had all the faking going on, and they still couldn't accomplish the nature of that steal. So what they did is they put up enough, and that's why they're freaking out right now, because they did everything they could, and the real tabulation is more likely that Trump in 2020 won by 4 or 5 more million than he had, maybe 80-ish million. But what we kind of know through a couple different sources is that in 2020, Joe only got maybe 20 million, and that would have been lessened if they knew about the Biden laptop of the people, and that Kamala didn't even get that number.
No,
the reality is she could not have even gotten 20.
The weird, just numerically, just mathematically.
Sure.
If you look back at John Kerry, when he ran for president, he got about 65 million. But Obama got about 66, 67 million.
Correct.
Okay. Then who was the next one? Then it was
Obama went 66, and then he went 70.
Trump won, and Hillary got about 64 million.
Right.
65 million. And Trump won that year. And maybe she still got 66 and anyway, but she won the popular vote according to the machines. Then when Biden beats Trump in 2020, he gets 81 million.
Yeah.
81 million. There's no way he gets 15, 16 more million than the popular Obama did.
Right.
And nobody liked Biden to begin with, and everybody was already suspect of his health. And then Kamala gets 65 million this time, or thereabouts. Right. And so the whole trend is steady at 65, 66 million, except Biden, in the year that the cheating went up skyrocketing, he got 81 million, and yet he lost 215 counties more than Obama did.
And
He's
so,
wrong.
I mean, I know we're kind of off of the topic, which is totally, I'm totally cool with it here. But I'll say this: once we, and we are going to see this in a short time frame, we're going to see some of the nature of how much they've been stealing, and they've been doing this for generations. This is not like a news.
No, of course, no, this isn't new.
I mean, LBJ did this back in 48.
He cheated to get Senate.
Yep.
To get the Senate. Bad.
And
he cheated.
A very common kind of thing with that back and forth. But here's the cool part here. So we'll kind of bring back in here, because I want you to kind of hit into this, because it's so relevant just to where we were going with it too. Bring it up on the screen. Is there a difference between the police and the sheriffs in America? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, first, the sheriff is the CLEO, as I mentioned, but the main point is what I said is that they're appointed by the people. The police, the chiefs of police, are bureaucrats. They're appointed. They're appointed by another committee, or they're appointed by the city council. And then after the city council, which they are elected,
right.
Most of them. But then they hire someone called the town manager or city manager, and the chief of police reports to him.
Okay.
Someone who's never even worked in law enforcement, usually.
Hmm.
And the sheriff is elected by, for, and of the people. And that's what makes this so hugely different. So then people say, well, who handles all the calls for law enforcement in the county? Well, there's a gentleman's agreement that within the city limits, the police do, the police department.
Okay.
The calls. And in my particular situation, we handled all the dispatching for all the police agencies. There were 3 others. And then I started something new. When I was elected, I said, I want to communicate with all the other law enforcement. So we had the sergeant for the local highway patrol and the 3 chiefs of police, and we met every month. And we tried as much as we could to get on the same page. And one is because, first of all, we dispatched for all of them. And so that's not the case every place, but still you want communications open. Say, look, folks, and we would explain this. Are we going to go along with asset forfeiture and take people's homes from them before they're convicted of anything? Take all the cash from them? I said, that's illegal. And working and policing for profit like that and getting commissions that we take ourselves and then put them in the general fund. Sometimes they put it right into their own budgets.
Right.
And I said, you guys, we've got to be above that. And another one I had a big problem with was DUI checkpoints.
Oh yeah. We
could just stop everybody. I said, who came up with that?
Until proven innocent. I mean, over and over again.
But the Supreme Court said we could. I said, does the Supreme Court run your office or do you? And do you know that the 4th Amendment says that we must have probable cause before we can stop people?
Correct.
And yet you're going to violate that because the Supreme Court says you can? And I said, no, we run this. We took the oath and we're supposed to be setting the example. And so we started changing that. And I said, look, all you have to do is put up a sign that says it's voluntary. And if people want to voluntarily come through this, then fine. And I said, even people that have been drinking will still come through because they don't want to look, like, somebody's, I'm good. I'll get through this. But it must be voluntary or we're violating the law.
So in a pure circumstance, let's just, we'll just use, the Phoenix area, for instance, just for the heck of it here.
Okay, good one.
So let's just say in the Phoenix area, and we have the Maricopa sheriff, and then we have the police. And let's say in a pure constitutional republic, and everyone's aligning in that kind of way, it takes a lot of effort for this to happen. I believe it's coming. But so the police would then report out to the sheriff in that way?
In a true constitutional republic, we wouldn't have police departments.
Gotcha.
I'm
So,
sorry.
so they would be
Well,
kind of co-opted into the sheriff department, the
but
ones
it's
that are.
something it's something that's been going on. When the city started incorporating, they wanted
Uh,
power. So they started getting their own police departments. The sheriff should be the only law enforcement officer in every county. And he could do everything that the police departments are doing. And why have them? Because he's already the sheriff. Everybody in the city, everybody in the city of Phoenix still votes for the sheriff.
sure.
He still runs their jail. And so the county still has patrol deputies, patrol officers, just like the city does.
Right.
But we're never going to change that. That's too big of a mountain to try to overcome. And so all I want now is communication and working together between the police departments and the sheriff. And the sheriff can say this: if you start violating the rights, if I keep getting complaints, I'm going to investigate those,
Sure.
and I'm going to start taking over some of the calls.
Sure.
And I have the authority to do that. And all of you know I have the authority to do that. So let's start working together. I want to work with you. I want to get along, but we're not going to be violating the rights of the people. And we're going to cut back on one of the greatest abuses in the country by law enforcement: traffic tickets.
Sure.
What I call traffic tickets is taxation through citation.
Right.
And when I was a rookie cop, I didn't want to do that anymore. I said, why am I a tax collector?
Right.
I want to be a public servant. I want to help people. I want to work with people. Yeah, I arrest people. I'll arrest people. I'll even give tickets every now and again. But they must be where there's a victim and where they've done something that victimized somebody else, not
Sure.
just radar gun, bring in the money thing. No.
Right. I mean, I always found that a fascinating part with that too, but kind of move that forward so we can kind of get to some of the cool things that are in here. But what I'm hearing you say is that, in a true situation, a true republic, that we would have sheriffs and then deputies around, in that kind of order. But you're saying, well, if we at least have the police in essence underneath the sheriffs in some way of communication, then that would be more acceptable. Would
And we
that be
still need to
correct?
train all of them, because
Sure.
none of them are ever trained in the oath of office or
Sure.
what our role is. When was the last time a police officer in this country or the police nationwide were trained in the significance of the oath of office and the role we play in preserving our constitutional republic?
No, I don't know of anyone
Never.
that
It's hard. It's maybe because we have started this now, and Chris Ann Hall and a couple others. It's maybe 1 or 2%, and it's not nearly enough. And so this is really what we've dedicated ourselves to at the CSPOA. We want to train the public, and we want to train all police officers, especially sheriffs and deputies, in the Constitution. This is our name of our class: the Constitution for Law Enforcement.
And guys, I'm going to recommend right now. I mean, we popped up the little area here so you guys can check it out. But definitely sign up. I mean, there are abilities for you to sign up. Be on the mailing list. I promise you, some people look at mailing lists and go, "Oh, I just don't want another mailing." This is probably a more responsive level of your mailing, because you need to understand.
We don't share them, and this is the thing. You want to be a part of this because it is one of the only solutions we have left that's peaceful and effective. If you think we can become complacent and put our feet up on the desk and sit back because Trump's in there, we've got so much work to do, and we're going to need to have his back. And
Absolutely.
the sheriffs of this country better be working with the White House to implement what he wants to do to diminish the role and diminish the tyranny that's going on in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to throw this one out at you because this is concerning a lot of people here with that too. The military responsibility, what's the difference between that military responsibility and the sheriff's responsibility in that way? How would you differentiate those two groups there?
Well, the military is not allowed to be involved in domestic purposes and domestic incidents. It's against the law. They are not the national police. Okay. Uh, the federal government, when the states, formed the federal government, we formed them. They are a creature of the states.
Correct.
And we delegated to them 5 law enforcement powers. Those are not to be done by the military. Okay. So could the military be at the border? Yes, because they have jurisdiction there. And if it gets crazy like it's been, the National Guard should be at the border until we get this thing settled.
Right.
Okay. The sheriffs don't have the resources to do that, even though some of them along the border have been trying, but it's running them ragged.
Right.
And it's resources that have just completely dried up their sheriff's offices. And there's several sheriffs that I've talked to about that in Arizona and Texas. New Mexico and California don't care. They can come all the way through because they have socialist, crazy leftist, extremist governors. But I want everybody to know this. There's 5 law enforcement authorities or powers that we, the states, we, the people, delegated to the federal government. They are: 1, treason. That's federal prerogative. The federal government has the authority to have a federal agency that investigates treason. Okay. Don't you wish they would do that? Don't you wish the FBI would actually do that? They won't even investigate people within Washington, D.C. They don't want to upset their little elitist clique. 2, counterfeiting. 3, felonies committed on the high seas or piracies. 4, in Article 4, Section 4, they are required, and it says shall protect the borders from invasion. Okay. Bang up job they're doing there. If they don't do it, can the states take that back? Absolutely. Yes. The states are sovereign and they can protect their own. And then 5 is violations of treaties. That doesn't come up too much. Folks, this is it. The 10th Amendment says the powers not delegated to the United States government by the Constitution are reserved to the states, reserved to the people. That stays with us. The failure has been that the states and the people have gone to sleep and they didn't stop the federal government from stealing and usurping thousands of others. Thousands. And now that's a thing that we have got to work with Trump to take back.
Well, and I think that's coming. So you're opening my eyes on a couple areas I hadn't really.
Are you going to tell Trump to put me on the cabinet?
Yeah, well, I'm sure he's got your phone number, with that too. There's a fascinating just on a side. There's a fascinating conversation that even Donald Trump Jr. is saying. He goes, I just want for a month to have Alex Jones up there as a press secretary. I think it's hysterical. Just the conversation, how much it would freak them all out with that too. So a sideline point. Anyway, let me share this one with you. So communities feel abandoned by the police. They feel abandoned by the 3-letter agencies. We sort of have mentioned that with that too. So, and you've sort of shared this a little bit. What do the sheriffs do to help fix this level?
Well, first of all, you don't want federal agencies in your county. They're part of the problem. They're trouble. They're corrupt. And the states have everything that the federal government has stolen. Environmental quality, not equality, environmental quality. Every state has that. And if they need to work with another state, good, do it. But the federal government, the EPA, has been counterproductive to any of that. And they come in and they steal people's property. If there's a rain and it forms a pond, they come in and say, oh, that's the Wetlands Act. You can't touch that. It's not your property. It's ours now. And the federal government keeps taking land, especially in the West, that is not theirs. They think any land that is just out there, just not inhabited and just, it's theirs. it becomes the Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service. And there's been all sorts of fights with that. The Bundys did it. The Haigs did it in Nevada, in Nye County. And it's just the federal government is going to take and commit crimes and kill people like they did at Ruby Ridge and Waco
Right.
and other places. And you don't want this because they are never accountable. Leave them out. The sheriff should leave them out. If they have legitimate under those 5 powers that we delegated, then they need to check with the sheriff first. And that's what the sheriff should be doing. He's a buffer for any of the federal agencies that want to come into his county. Fine. You have to be within those 5 authorities, and you check with the sheriff first so he can send a deputy with you and make sure that everything's copacetic and the rights of the people are being protected. That is a policy we've tried to implement for over 20 years.
Well, I'm telling you right now, what you're doing and is going to happen. I'm telling you right now as a prophecy point, because I'm seeing a whole bunch of different issues happening out here. We're seeing a lot of fraud. Now, there's a very interesting things that tend to be happening right now. We have policy enforcement people who will show up at people's doors and not identify themselves, or say that they're FBI or show you some fake badge. Right. And people are calling them out on this kind of thing. And it's good because it's people have to understand Biden was hired by the corporation. This is the fakeness of this. Therefore, he didn't have the authority to accomplish things. And that's why you're seeing so much faking going on here. Right. And so that's it messes people up, because when because we've been taught, and a little bit fraudulently taught. We've been taught for a very long time, in essence, I'm not saying it in a literal stance, but bow to authority. Because I'm going to put it this way: the worst bit of logic that has ever been perpetrated on the American people is that the worst bit of logic is to say an authority is right. And the answer is authorities aren't right. There's something else beyond that, which is why we talk about logic there. Right. But we have to be a country of laws, and that they are immutable levels of laws, which means that they come from God. That's what the Constitution indicates in that way. Exactly. And we have to be, and once we do that, what will start happening is people will be scared to break the law. We need that. Yeah. Amen to that. Amen. And one thing I wanted to back up what my last answer was to your question. I want to back it up. You see, folks, everything we've been talking about is backed up by this Supreme Court case. Our organization was founded out of the beautiful principles that were articulated by the United States Supreme Court, specifically Justice Antonin Scalia, God rest his soul. And he quotes the Federalist Papers. He literally quotes the Founding Fathers, the Constitution, and the Federalist Papers. And get this, this was so beautiful. He quotes Federalist 51, and he said, quote, "Hence a double security arises to the rights of the people." End quote for a minute. I'm going to add something. How does that happen? How does a double security arise to the rights of the people? Now I'm quoting again. "The different governments will control each other." Folks, that's our job. That's our job, to protect you from all enemies, both foreign and domestic. And right now, and this is why I feel that it is a godsend that Trump got in here. The miracle has happened, because all of a sudden this is being interrupted. That what they were doing to us in taking over and destroying our Constitution and taking over America with the Marxist and Communist Manifesto. And I thought this was going to happen, because I thought there was going to be cheating. I thought we were going to have Kamala. But now the real work begins, folks. Right. And we have got to be part of this solution. If we sit back, we're not going to be.
The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. That's the double security. We've got to be involved, and we've got to do this. And everything that we're doing is backed up by the Constitution itself and by this amazing, miraculous Supreme Court case that all of you can have and should have in your hands.
Yeah. So again, we're gonna as we end up here, and I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna call you back some other time too. We got to do a little bit more stuff.
Let's do it once a month or once a week.
Yeah. So like there's so many little facets, and we have a lawyer that is coming on with us talking about Chevron, the Chevron doctrine, and several other constitutional points. They're beautiful guys that we will have him on Monday, and I'll have him be loaded up maybe Tuesday, Wednesday or so. But the reality is, guys, look at this website. I want you to sign in for it. Hey, listen, I don't tell people what to do most of the time, but you know what? I'm telling you what to do right now. Go and sign in. And by the way, do you realize that these people are doing this out of their own kindness, and it takes a lot of effort. So if you have the ability to donate as well, I really would. I believe God will be respecting that, and that's a great opportunity to be able to donate to this organization as well. So that's the cool thing that's happening, guys. Great things are happening. You just have to step up and step into that destiny God is calling you to do.
Right.
And I just thank you so much for coming on with me.
Well, it's great to have a new friend, Doctor, and thank you so much. I want to learn more from you, and so let's keep in touch, and let's do this again. And I'll finish with the last line of the Declaration of Independence. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Folks, we must do likewise if we're going to preserve this great constitutional republic that the founders fought and died for. We must do likewise.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.